topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Connected Table Live. We're your hosts, Melanie Young and David Ransom. You're insatiably curious culinary couple. We like to travel the world, and today the U.S., virtually, to bring you the places we meet and people we meet and the wines we like to drink and foods we like to eat, because we want you to get out there and eat, drink, be inspired, and explore with us. So today we're going to Oregon. Now, I'll be honest, I've only been to Oregon once, and that was to the Columbia River Gorge. So this is going to be an exploration of a place I want to go, which is the Willamette Valley. Do you hear that, Oregon Wine Board? And when I think of Oregon, I think of two things, David, and you tell me what you think. I think of amazing Pinot Noir wines, amazing, and mushrooms, and how great they go together.
Yeah, that's true too.
What about you, David?
Well, definitely Pinot Noir, Willamette Valley, and Portland and the beautiful coast as well.
Haven't been.
There's lots going on there.
James Beard, he's from Oregon. He was from Oregon.
That's right. James Beard is from Oregon. But today we're going to talk about wine.
We are. So we're setting it up because Oregon is a beautiful place in the Northwest that everybody should visit. And it's got a lot of diversity to it. And a lot of my friends who have gone and lived there love it for vacationing. But of course, everybody really likes to also go to explore wines. And we're taking you to one of the most renowned regions of Oregon's AVAs, the Willamette Valley. It's actually a very large region running north to south. And we're going to talk with Kate Ayres, who is the winemaker for Penner-Ash, which was established in 1998 by Lynn and Ron Penner-Ash in the northern Willamette Valley in the Yamhill-Carlton AVA. That makes Lynn one of the early pioneers, along with some other amazing women who helped create the Oregon wine movement. They have since become part of the Jackson Family Wine portfolio. I think that was in 2016. And you had the opportunity to sit down with Kate when she made a market visit to New Orleans for dinner. I sadly had to miss it.
We had a lovely hedonistic meal.
Yeah,
yes.
which I heard
quite
about. Fun. And our next stop will be going to Penner-Ash to visit. But if you look, there it is. And we bring the winemaker for Penner-Ash on our show now, Kate Ayres. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And that's the beautiful inside of Penner-Ash.
Yes. So this is our pavilion where you can do a private seated tasting.
Yes, which we're going to talk about. But first, we always like to talk about you. Kate, you were born and raised in Oregon. What was that like? What's it like to be born and raised in Oregon? What are some of your childhood memories and what you like to eat and drink, and how do you like to play?
Yeah, I'm a rare fifth generation Oregonian. So the Ayres Brockway families have been here for quite some time. And I grew up on the North Coast. My dad is an avid fisherman. We did a lot of mushroom hunting, speaking to mushrooms. So I spent a lot of time on the water, whether that was playing, fishing, crabbing, clamming. But we also spent a lot of time like water skiing, and I had family over the mountains in the Bend area. So the Cascade Lakes are near and dear to me. I mean, I think of it as my child as being pretty picturesque and also like very coastal Oregon. It was a tiny little town. I graduated with 90 students. My teachers in high school knew me from the day I was born. So it's a very, very tight-knit community, in a very, very different world than what I ended up, when I finally went off to college. But it was magical. The coast was amazing. It was really spectacular.
The pictures that I used to see that in some of the James Beard books, the very high, look like cliffs and dunes, just incredible. The coast.
It's so gorgeous, and it changes so much from the southern coast all the way up to the northern coast. And even now, I'm 20 years out of graduating, and the coastline has changed so dramatically. I mean, it's really phenomenal watching those weather patterns.
So originally, what were you planning to do with your life before you decided to go into wine? Or did you want to go into
Yeah,
wine?
I did not. Wine was not like a huge thing. I mean, my parents drank wine as a like a casual beverage, but it was not something that was focused or talked about in my family. I wanted to be a vet. My dad was like
Oh,
really, we always had dogs, and he was really, for whatever reason, anytime we went to the pet store, frequently came back with an additional animal. And we had chickens, and I had a goose, we had a duck, and I just wanted to be a veterinarian. I mean, from the time I was 3 years old, that's what I remembered that I wanted to do. My aunt was a vet tech. She took me around working on large animals. So it was like my mission to go through high school and do what I needed to do to get into UC Davis, right? That was the place to go. It was the thing I wanted to do. I never thought about another career. I never really looked at any other university. Like that was the spot to go. And I landed there and I started taking my classes. And probably like a lot of kids that think they want to be a vet, you realize there's a lot of terrible things about being a vet.
Mhm.
And I really just want to like nurture and foster my animals at home. And I love doing that. I've always had a dog, but I did not want to go down that career path. And it was, it's a long, it's pre-vet and then vet school, for the next 4 years. And so I needed a career change.
hmm.
And I literally stumbled into winemaking. I was looking through the course book. I was an out of state kid paying a lot of tuition. And I was like, oh, UC Davis is really, really well known for this like viticulture and enology program.
Mhm.
Who knew that that was a possible job opportunity? And I took my first course and I never turned back. I was like, holy moly, I can travel the world. I can eat and I can drink and I can see all these other cultures and meet all these other people. I mean, it's just like the whole world opened up. You're talking about this like small town girl. I'd been to the Czech Republic and that was about the only place I'd ever been.
We've never been to the Czech Republic. Have
No, we
you?
haven't.
Yeah, that must
Or,
have been
Yeah,
or
great.
Czechia,
super
as they're
random
calling
trip.
themselves.
Czechia, as I've learned from the Olympics.
From
I'm
the
like,
Olympics,
where's Czechia? I just saw them marching in the parade. And it's Czechoslovakia.
It was a beautiful country.
So they say. So a long way from veterinary to viticulture.
Yeah,
Although
Yeah,
it starts with the same letter.
to vet to
it's
vit.
yeah. Unfortunately, it starts with the same coursework, so it was an easy transition to make.
That's good. So tell us about your job trajectory then, because I think you've worked in California, obviously, because that's where you went to school. You also did some time overseas and then came back and worked in Oregon. So
Yeah,
tell us
yeah.
about
So
the trajectory.
I took my the fall quarter of my junior year off from Davis, and I worked for Cake Bread Cellars. I really just wanted to solidify that this was the course that I wanted to take with my life, and thank goodness I did because oh my God, I just fell in love with the people I worked for and fell in love with the job. And I was so excited to go back and finish my coursework at Davis. So I worked for Cake Bread in '06 and '08 while I was going to school. And then when I graduated in 2008, what did I do? I went to New Zealand and I worked in the South Island of New Zealand doing some pretty big production stuff there. But we had a Astro Lab and Jules Taylor were making wine in the same facility. So I was able to really focus on the Pinot from those companies. And I knew at that point that I wanted to do Pinot. That was definitely a focus of mine. So that was great. And then the fall of 2009, I went to Portugal and I worked in the Alentejo region of Portugal. I'd worked with some, this is how the wine world works, right? I'd work with some other fellow Portuguese, stayed in contact and went and worked there. That was just an incredible experience because you're working in a totally different ball game, right? You're going from Cake Bread Cellars, who was very well funded and elaborate and beautiful and making these beautiful, gorgeous Cabernets. And then you go to Portugal where you don't necessarily have heating and cooling and other systems in
Right.
place. So you learn making wine differently.
Which is the difficulty in Alentejo in the summertime when it's 110
Yeah.
degrees.
That is exactly the case. And then after Portugal, I came back and I worked for Bethel Heights here in Oregon. And after that, I went to the Barossa in Australia. And after Australia, I was pretty much done living out of a backpack and realized I needed to kind of buckle down and maybe find a real job, and look for health benefits. And I was really hoping to be here in Oregon, but it was 2011 at that point, and there were not a lot of job opportunities. And so I found the enologist position at the Hess Collection, and I started with them in the fall of 2011. And by the summer of 2012, I'd moved up to associate winemaker and was running one of their facilities. And then I just kind of bided my time. I had a really great time. I loved working for Dave Guffey. He was so wonderful. But I really had my eyes up in Oregon. And I had stayed in contact with Ben Castile over at Bethel Heights, and I got the phone call that Lynn Penner-Ash was quietly looking for an assistant winemaker. And so I submitted my resume, and here I am today.
So, so Lynn was the winemaker. Is she involved still, or are they
She is not. No. So they
retired
sold
now?
in 2016.
Right.
And I came on as associate winemaker at that point. In 2018, I got promoted up to winemaker as Lynn slowly started tapering back her time at the winery. And
for her.
it was a beautiful transition. She was there for support, but she was not there. She allowed me to blossom on my own and take over this facility by myself. And by harvest of 2021 was the last harvest that she, was kind of there in the periphery, if and when I needed her.
Well, it's interesting, obviously as a founder, it's hard to let go, but she is also an opportunity to mentor and share wisdom. What did you learn from her? What were some things that you learned knowing that you were happily back working predominantly with Pinot Noir, which you said you wanted to do?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was when I was hired by Lynn, I knew that this was the future path, right? If everything went according to plan. And of course, the first harvest I walked in, it was just a complete whirlwind. And she's driving me all over the valley. And we have 18 different sites that we're working with, and we're chatting during that time. And it was a lot, but she just took me through it step by step, and worked with me. And at the end of the day, over the 5 years that we got to work together, I think the biggest takeaways from her was she let me become my own person. She was to let go of a brand that has your name on it and give that off to somebody else that's got to be a huge act.
It is.
And it was big shoes to fill, but she never made me feel like she didn't have all of the faith in the entire world in me to take over this project. And she allowed me the breath to make it my own. I slowly started changing barrel programs. I have a lot of my winemaking is true to Lynn, but she gave me the ability to have my own voice. And she also taught me to really believe my gut instinct when I'm tasting. My palate it's so much bigger and broader, and my knowledge is so much greater on the back of Lynn, but she gave me that ability to have that own, I have that confidence in myself.
That's really
Now.
terrific. So you became promoted to main winemaker. Like with the kitchen, there's levels,
Yes.
from intern and stage to
Right.
commis to this and that, and similar in wine. So I'm curious. Again, I've never been to the Willamette Valley, but this is a big area. I'm looking at the map. You've got a lot of different vineyards. For people who've never been, let's kind of set up the geographical aspects of what is this specific area, because there's a lot going on, a lot of sub ABVs, and it's like many growing areas. It's north to south, so there's going to be a lot of microclimates in there. It is west of the Cascades, correct?
It is west of the Cascades, yes.
Yeah, which is important for Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Penner-Ash is in the northern area in Yamhill-Carlton, ABA, and you have, it looks like 18, you said, vineyards. How are they all different from a microclimate standpoint? And then we'll obviously talk about the wines and how they shape themselves, because the Pinot Noir really expresses itself based on this.
Yeah, so all of our vineyards are in the far northern tip of the Willamette Valley, which is where the
Okay.
bulk of the wineries are nestled.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about each of our sub AVAs and the vineyards within them, I think what's really interesting about Oregon are there's these so many aspects and rolling hills. You're not, I think about Napa and you have that very clear, you have Highway 29 and you have the Silverado Trail that run north and south, right?
Right.
That's it.
You got hills on
You know
either
what you're getting.
side and a bunch of bench land. And here there are so many different hills. So I am on, one tip of the Yamhill-Carlton. It's like a horseshoe, and we're on the eastern side of that versus the western side, which butts up against the coastal mountains. So my portion of Yamhill-Carlton is very, very warm. We tend to be earlier ripening, earlier bud break. We lean pretty hard into those sort of like darker fruits, bigger, firmer tannins.
Mm-hmm.
And the Ribbon Ridge AVA is right next to me, nestled
Right.
within the Chehalem Mountains. And those also tend to really lean, it's protected, and they tend to lean into those darker, bigger tannins, bolder wines.
Mm-hmm.
But, from my tasting room, I'm looking at the Dundee Hills, and it is an extremely protected hilltop, very, very early ripening. It's always my first fruit that I pull off, but then you are getting the red earthy notes, right? You're getting all of that like jory soil. So those are
Mm-hmm.
the spiced red fruits that are coming out of those vineyard sites. McMinnville is the coldest of our AVAs. It's the closest to the coastline for me. Those are my later sites. They tend to have lower pH, higher acidity. I get those like white pepper, different spiced notes. And then you go down to Yosemite, and even though it's the southern, you have that Van Duzer corridor coming in. So there's so
Yeah.
many winds. So that's a very late site for me. It's one of my last picks. The skins are tougher because of all those wind events. They tend to retain acid quite well. And then you get those lovely, like blue fruited floral notes.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these vineyards, you're only talking about 45 minutes between each of these zones. We're not super far distances, but they do make a pretty big difference in your weather patterns. And the Chehalem Mountains in the same way, like there is a certain exposure to these. And when Lynn was originally, building our Willamette Valley program, it was really, really important that we had all of these different sub AVAs. And we haven't had weather patterns like, historically, but there have been years where, the Dundee Hills will be wiped out from a hailstorm, right? And we have that, like, we have these other vineyards that we're working from that maybe we're protected just because of how the weather patterns work up here in Oregon.
It's kind of like having a financial portfolio.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much.
Diversify.
Diversify. I mean, it really is quite a diversified, and the wines are estate wines, very vineyard driven.
Yeah.
Which is that singular to Penner-Ash or typical of the producers in Oregon and Willamette Valley?
No, we're a rarity with how big our portfolio is with single vineyards. There's a couple of other brands that do a similar model. But it's not, it's an exception. It's certainly not the rule. And yeah, I would say actually quite a few producers, there's a lot of producers that own their own land, and then they'll make different bottlings out of their own holdings. So we're abnormal in that we only have a 15-acre. Penner-Ash originally only had the 15-acre parcel that our winery sits on, and everything else was purchased fruit. And that, of course, changed with the addition of Jackson family.
So everything now is estate?
No, we still buy about half of our fruit, but
Okay.
we had historically made a Zena crowned wine. And it's always been part of our portfolio. And Barbara Banke purchased that in 2013. So then when we joined in 2016, I got quite a bit more access to that vineyard, which is great.
Well, it's interesting because I think why this is important is that I call it the blind man and the elephant theory of business. And life. So if somebody goes out and orders a Penner-Ash Pinot Noir estate wine, that wine may be different to them than, say, the Penner-Ash Zena Crown. or which we're going to get into, or the Penner-Ash Elevate, which we have the lucky because you send them all to us. And it's not just, it's like everything in life. If somebody says, oh, I'm not a big fan of Oregon Pinot Noir. Well, which one did you try and from what AVA right. and what vintage is it? So again, as we always say, open up your eyes and your mind and your palate, because the wine you tasted last week at dinner that you were like, yeah, it's okay, I don't know. You try another one, because you may just go, wow, this is great from another area, right? And I think that's important to understand that they're all nuanced, which brings me to Pinot Noir. You liked working with Pinot Noir. How is it different from working with, say, Cabernet?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a story that everybody who makes Pinot says, but it really doesn't, you can't hide anything from growing it in the vineyard all the way through the winemaking process, right? You have to be so on top of what you're doing, especially in Oregon with your vineyard practices. We have a finite season. We have rain, we have mildew, we have botrytis, we have all the yummy good things. And when you have those things, you also need to be cautious of it when you're bringing it into the winery, right? So for me, I think of Pinot Noir as just like, yes, it's a finicky grape. It's a grape that you have to sort of coddle all the way through. But if you're really, really careful with it and you're very mindful and your practices are good, it will yield these incredible, beautiful results. And it makes a big difference where it is grown, a huge difference of where it's coming from. And that's not to say that Cabernet is like a piece of cake. And of course, Cabernet is very different depending on where you're growing it.
Yeah.
But you can also kind of beat Cab up and still walk out at the end with this excellent product, right? It can take so much more. Nobody wants a bunch of oxygen in their wine, but you definitely can't be exposing Pinot Noir to any amount of O2, right? It will completely adjust your wine. So I think for me, like from the moment I saw it working at Cakebread, it was a very small Pinot Noir production at the time, but all of a sudden I'm looking over there and I'm like, there's these tiny little open top fermenters that seem to be treated differently than these much bigger closed top fermenters that are just kind of getting pump overs 5 times a day, right? You're just manipulating it so much. So I like that. I think it really like tests me as a winemaker. It tests my team. Like we have to be so diligent at what we're doing and the nuances of a Pinot. I love that. That's the art form, right? That's what brings me joy when I'm making it.
Great explanation.
It really is.
Really nicely done. One of the things we talked about at dinner was you talk about the different climates and the different zones and whatnot, but also the geography comes into play a lot and the soil types come into play a lot, because all those different regions, vineyard sites that you have, they all have different geography, and they have different soil types that the grapes grow in. So those bring in different characters to the wine when it's made as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think of Shea basically like envelops the Penner-Ash estate vineyard, and our estate vineyard is largely sedimentary, but we have this giant volcanic strip running through it, and it's this volcanic matter that came from the Cascades so many millions years ago. Shea vineyard doesn't have that. It is largely sedimentary, and so the fruit profiles off of these two vineyards for a multitude of reasons, but that's certainly one of them.
Well, it's so funny you hear volcanic, and I think a lot of people don't realize that there is volcanic activity up through the western coast of the United States, the ridge.
Well, it's part of the Ring of Fire.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't even know that. Speaking of, I'm curious. You worked in New Zealand, and it is at Astrolab. Is that in Central Otago or somewhere else? I've never been to New Zealand.
Well, so we were up in Marlborough, but we had grapes coming in from Central Otago and being shipped up.
So how would you, to someone that is curious, describe the characteristics of a New Zealand Pinot Noir to Oregon Pinot Noir to the classic Burgundy Pinot Noir? And I know there's other growing regions. I mean, there's some terrific ones in Sonoma. But how would you characterize the nuances, differences, and styles?
Yeah, I mean, I've of course consumed way more Oregon Pinot than all of the above. And I wish I had a deeper history of Burgundy. But for me, my like inherent feeling is that there is Burgundies tend to be like earthier and little more rustic for
Mhm.
me. Like their body is different. The oak profile seems different, and there's
Mhm.
a rusticity to those wines. New Zealand and Oregon, I think traditionally have shared a little bit more similarity, and that they're definitely New Zealand seems a little bit more lighter in style, especially in respect to the Penner-Ash, because I think Penner-Ash makes pretty like layered deep wines. But I think we both tend to be very like fruit driven
Mhm.
with kind of like those red sort of warm spiced notes that seems a little fresher, for lack of a better term, than what I think of when I think of Burgundy.
Well, I think I agree with
Yeah.
you. We had the rare pleasure of going to Burgundy with an importer, and so it was my first foot in Burgundy and getting to drink a lot of it.
Yeah.
And my immediate reaction was, I love the wines. Firstly, they have a austerity to them, an
Hmm.
elegant austerity and a
Yep.
mushroomy
Yeah.
quality.
Yep.
That's the earth. The earthiness is a mushroomy. I feel like I'm crunching the leaves. They're a little
Hmm.
crunchy,
Hmm.
and that's, I think, is what you mean by the rusticity. I don't know if you
Hmm.
agree to it. And then when I taste your wines, I get more spice and fruit. I get a different type of earth, but fruit and spice, more along the lines of New Zealand. I've
Yeah.
never been to New Zealand, so, and I haven't had enough of the New Zealand Pinot Noirs to go
Mhm.
further on that. But and then California and the Sonoma, much different in terms of more fruit and more, just
Yeah.
location,
Kind of
location.
everything. Yeah.
But it's interesting because there are Burgundy producers who have invested in Oregon as well as South Africa, and Hamilton Russell invested in Oregon, I think in the Willamette
In the
Valley,
Willamette Valley.
and they make a beautiful Pinot Noir also
Hmm.
in South Africa. If you ever have to trust, it's more in the style of the French style. It's really quite
Okay.
lovely. Yeah,
Yeah, they do some good stuff.
yeah.
Mhm.
So Pinot Noir can be around the world, but it's a very particular grape with a distinct personality that needs to be coddled. And to, it's like, it's not an ugly duckling, but it's like that child that needs to have a lot of grooming and
It's like you don't want to be too hands-on with it because you don't want to manipulate it, but
right.
you need to just keep a watchful eye through the whole life cycle of that wine.
Interesting. Well, why don't we talk about some of the wines?
Well,
we've,
we've
unless you want
been
to
talking about Pinot Noir a lot. Why
Yeah.
don't we talk
Oh yeah,
a
the
little bit
white.
about some of the whites that you make? Because
Actually, that's
obviously,
a great
you know,
segue.
the Willamette Valley is also a great place for Chardonnay and a couple other grapes as well. And you make a few whites along with the many Pinot Noirs that you
Great
make.
point. So let's
Let's
start
do
with
that.
that.
Again, Chardonnay is a good starting point because it's one of the two signature grapes, I think, in that and Pinot Noir in the Willamette Valley.
Pinot Gris, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So Chardonnay. um the history of Penner-Ash, I mean, so I had said I worked for the Hess collection for 5 years. I, of course, made a lot of Chardonnay there, an enormous amount of it. And I did not love it anymore. I really didn't. But in 2017, Jackson Family, of course, deeply rooted in Chardonnay, approached me and they were like, we'd really like Penner-Ash to start a Chardonnay program. And
Mm.
Lynn had like famously said Penner-Ash would never put Chardonnay in a bottle, but here we are today making Chardonnay.
Are you liking it?
I am actually.
Yeah.
I think Oregon Chardonnays are incredible. I think it really like reinvigorated what Chardonnay can be. There's just so much acidity and austerity and minerality to the Chardonnays up here. And I think that like I'm still finding where I want to be with the Chardonnay here at Penner-Ash, but I like where we're going.
Mhm.
And it's taken a lot of years, right? Like when I started the program, I went around and I tasted barrels with other producers that I loved and I picked their brains, and we've bounced around where we've bought and purchased grapes from. But I like our direction. It's generally pretty low impact oak. We make 3 different Chardonnays now. So the Willamette Valley is the
Mhm.
one you'll see out in the world.
Mhm.
Mm.
And it definitely has a little bit more oak. It definitely has that like weight and texture and balance that I think of in our Pinot Noirs. So we're kind of mirroring that. Um, and then we have a pot of gnome and now a single vineyard one that are a little brighter. And for me, like there's a focus and like a minerality to those wines. And
Mhm.
I incorporated concrete eggs and I started using porcelain eggs. So it's been a program that I've been working on for 8 years now, which, when I say 8 years, that feels like a long time. But in learning what you're doing, it's actually really not that long. And I like that it has given some creative, like, it's like, what are we going to do this year? Let's do something wild and zany. And we sent one of our employees to Giant Steps down in Australia, and she came
Hmm.
back and she was like, "Hey, they make Chardonnay in this way, and I think it's really good. Let's try it." And so we did. We went from press directly into barrel and let it go. Native fermentation, ripped through primary and secondary. It's a great wine. It's something I stresses me out.
And
There
probably
was
something you
no
don't make a lot of either.
there was not a lot of control, but man, we learned something, and so
Yeah.
I think that was really cool. So it's been a fun program to very slowly build.
Well, Chardonnay is so the impact of the winemaker is so seen in Chardonnay and style. And again, it's another grape variety that like the blind man and the elephant theory. Just because you have one, it's going to be completely different somewhere else. Don't
Yeah,
expect it to be
absolutely.
uniform. What I get excited about you also, and this is more common in Oregon, is your Riesling. You have one Old Highland Vineyard Riesling in the McMinnville sub AVA, and Riesling and Pinot Gris and then followed by Chardonnay are the strongest white grapes in Oregon. Tell us about your Riesling.
Yeah, I love making our Riesling. So these are vines planted in 1972. They're still unrooted. They're just these like, the mangled, gnarly looking vines.
Hmm.
And it's amazing the amount of crop that they'll still put on. And I try to be pretty hands off from all the way from the beginning through to the finish, right? I'll go out, we'll make sure that there's like, pretty good air, leaf removal on those vines. And I will get all the way through Pinot Noir harvest. And then you're like, there's one more thing that we need to make sure that we're going to sample. And we'll shoot out there. I like a little bit of botrytis in it just to like give some more character. We hand sort it. We go direct to press, tank ferment it with a couple of barrels. And for me, I just like those vines are so special that it's just I need to back away from that and let them
Mhm.
express what they're gonna express because man, they put out some really beautiful characteristics. And the only thing that I think I need to do is make sure that we're balancing that acid because they're so old. They're not accumulating a lot of sugar. They're certainly not dropping their acid. So we just need to, we're just trying to hit that like 1-to-1 ratio on the palate to make
Mhm.
sure that it's a nice, crisp, balanced aromatic white. I love making that wine so much.
I find that the Rieslings that we've tasted in both Oregon and Washington State are just incredible. We had the Ekelens was another one we had that we were like,
Mm,
wow, it was like
hmm.
great, and that's up in Walla Walla. What's nice about your Riesling, and it's got so many flavors that go well with the kind of foods that we like. We're Asian,
Yep,
Asian flavors, and of course where we live, Ajun and Cajun.
for
Hmm.
sure.
Uh,
No,
so
it's like
you've got
perfect.
the incredible pear and ginger and honeysuckle and just it's a terrific wine. And again, Riesling is another wine where you taste one, you go, I don't know about that. You keep going and keep tasting because styles are going to different.
Very
And
much so.
obviously, the cooler the climate, for me personally, the greater the Riesling potential. So really awesome. You
Yeah.
also sent us a Viognier, which I happen to love Viognier. I happen to love the Viognier from Northern Rhone. Um, Tell us about that, because Viognier, is that a commonly grown variety?
No,
Not at all.
I was, like,
not at
wondering, it
all.
didn't seem
I
so.
remember we were talking about that at dinner, Kate.
Yeah. I
I was
think
like, so tell me about
Christum.
the Viognier. And you were like, yeah.
Yeah, that one kinda
Yeah.
threw us. It was a ringer.
Yeah, it's our biggest production white wine we make. And
Wow.
we make about 1,200 cases of it. And it really was like rooted in a multitude, and we've been making it since I think 2000. And Lynn didn't want to do Pinot Gris because so many people were doing mediocre Pinot Gris.
Mm-hmm.
And so she wanted to put her flag somewhere else, a different white wine. And we were doing Syrah at the time, and there was definitely co-fermentations happening. And then the Viognier program took off. It's a white wine that you don't get a lot of, but it was
Yes,
growing
right.
in Southern Oregon, and it grows in the Hood River Gorge, and we had sites in both locations. And so it's been like a huge staple for Penner-Ash. And I don't know if it's still the case, but for a while there, and we might still be, we were the largest producers of Viognier in the state of Oregon.
Wow.
Well, it was a
That's
delightful
like,
wine, and
Yeah.
it's
I remember
so much fun
talking
to
about how
make.
nice the acidity was in it as well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, especially in the Rhone, you get Viogniers that are thick and
Yeah.
Right.
and viscous
Plush.
and whatnot,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
plush. But
And
this
that's
was
what
not
I
that.
need too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah,
this has a real nice acidity to it and a
Mhm.
nice bite to it.
it's also great with Asian food and perhaps
Mhm.
Cajun food.
Cajun and Cajun, that guys. Sometimes so a little in Mexican or the food, Middle Eastern. I love all those flavors.
Just like any, I mean, I love both of those wines because we can use them here for any seafood dishes we're doing, or if
Mhm.
we have anything that's spicy or Asian, and Riesling. Even it's what I do for our dessert course. It's like a little bit of
Mhm.
cheese and some Riesling, and
Oh wow,
call it a day.
I'm hungry.
Well, and we had a couple of those while
Yeah,
we
that's
get dinner that
just
night.
fabulous.
It's true.
You know, I want to talk about obviously the Pinot Noir program is big. You make a lot of them. It's a little daunting to go through your website and see all of the different types of Pinot Noir you
Yeah.
make, and a lot of them
Mhm.
are vineyard oriented. But you have a program called the Pas de Nome,
Mhm.
which you make both white and Pinot Noir out of. So let's talk about that. Why don't you define that for us and tell our viewers what the Pas de Nome program is? And here's
Yeah.
a picture of it right here.
Yeah. So the Pot de Nome, well, to go back,
Mhm.
our blending process here at Penner-Ash is pretty rigorous. So as you mentioned, we make 14 different Pinot Noirs, 12 of which are single vineyards. And so we taste every individual barrel in the cellar. We're a team of 4, and everybody has an equal voice at the table. And so we taste each of those barrels from the single vineyards and we score them. And if there's this really truly standout barrel, then it gets the score that puts it flags it for this Pot de Nome blend. And it doesn't mean that the whole barrel will go towards Pot de Nome. It means I usually pull about 15 gallons out of that barrel and I'll work with that to make this blend. But it has to speak to you in some way. And whether or not it's, oh my God, the oak aromas or the fruit, or there's something aromatically that's just like, there's like for me, there's like a feeling, like that kind of gut, like you hit that glass and you're like,
Mhm.
that one, that is speaking to me in whatever way. Sometimes it's a palate related thing. It doesn't have to be all of those characteristics. It just needs to be something. And so, you go around the table and then there's a lot of Excel spreadsheets. And I keep a running tab of all of those barrels that have been flagged for Pot de Nome. And so while we're currently blending up the single vineyard, we're also simultaneously blending up that Pot de Nome. And it's, it's basically our reserve wine, right? It is the upper tier of our wine program. And contrary to like normal belief of reserve wines, this wine, I need it to have this delicacy and this nuance. I want it to dance across the palate. It still needs to carry breadth and weight and depth and a purity of fruit, but I want it to not do that heavily. I want it to do it so you're getting that lasting, lingering finish, but with like kind of this like purity to the whole process. And so that's what I'm looking for as we're going through all these barrels and we're curating this process, this blend. And it will come down to the finites. Like we start with blend A. We've totally gone into like double A, double B, double C with a 5-gallon difference of like a single barrel or whatever it is. So that's how both of these Pot de Nome blends are put together. It's a very daunting task for the Pinot because you're frequently talking about 600 barrels that can be a candidate for this program that is 150 cases.
Wow. Yeah, it's a lot of barrels, small production.
So still good for the wines that don't make it into the blend.
And the blend
Yeah.
changes every
They
vintage,
blend.
right?
It's always,
So
yep, it's always tasted blind. So there's no
it's
like, yep,
interesting.
there's not specific vineyards. And I can't express enough how much, yeah, I'm the winemaker at the end of the day. And if it really comes down to a hard decision, of course I'm making those hard decisions. But it is a group, it is a team effort to make this.
Mhm.
We all have a say in it. And I think that's always really important too, because when we get to the blending in the cellar,
Mhm.
that wine is the biggest headache. That wine will go into 10 different tanks to start with before it becomes its final blend,
Wow.
if not 15 different tanks. I mean, it is
Wow.
a true labor of love. And so I always feel like there has to be some pretty good buy in from the staff that's actually ca- carrying out all the racking.
And you do a Pas de Nome, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. I love that you say dance across the palate because I think it's Pas de Deux, even though Pas de Nome.
I've never heard that before. That's great.
You should call it Pas de Deux instead of no name. Pas de
No
Nome.
name.
Pas
We
de
don't even
Deux.
need to name it.
Very lovely. And what a special wine. Limited production. So I bet it's very pricey. I don't know what the price is on
It's
it.
not
Okay.
cheap. The
Yeah.
Pinot Noir is $140.
Yeah, so 140.
Yeah.
So for the
If they have it.
range, and we have about 3 minutes left. So for the range of Pinot Noirs, because there's so many, we if for someone who wants what we call not the entry level, but yeah, the entry level Pinot Noir for Penner-Ash, take us through maybe like 3 that you would take, as you progress.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it has a lot to do with that palate, right? So our flagship wine is the Willamette Valley, so that is
Mhm.
your sort of entry level, and I think
Right.
that one's just an incredible representative. I mean, it's so
Mhm.
cool that we have so many different sites, so it's like a real snapshot of the
Right.
vintage and the Willamette Valley, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's incredible. And then it has so much to do with who your consumer is, right? How many
Right.
times have we heard the person come into the tasting room and they say, I don't drink Pinot Noir, I only drink Cabernet.
Right.
Great. I have something for you from the Ribbon Ridge AVA or the Yamhill-Carlton AVA, or you have the Burgundy, lover. And for me, that's when I say I have this Elevate. It tends to be
Elevate.
a little
Mhm.
lighter. It leans a little bit more in that direction. So I think that's like the beauty of having so many different Pinots, right?
Yeah.
Is that
Mhm.
everybody who walks into our tasting room, hopefully we find at least one, if not multiple single vineyards that they can gravitate to and love as much as I do. I like all of our little babies, but they're not for everybody.
Elevate, another dance term. Releve. Elevate it would be a Burgundy lover. And then how would you describe the Zena Crown Vineyard for someone who comes in and says, how would you describe this style?
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
there
I
one?
would put it in that like slightly bigger. It's not as big as perhaps our Ridgecrest or our Bramble Hill, but
Right.
you're definitely getting some firm tannins in there. But
Yeah.
I love that there is like this inherent sweetness and this really nice acid profile to it. It's
Mhm.
it's definitely got a lower pH, higher acidity
Mhm.
than some of our northern sites. So I put it in that like it's like right in the middle of the road, right? You're not like
Perfect.
that real big Pinot. You're
Mhm.
not in the like delicate
Mhm.
elevate camp. You're right there in the center. And I find that if I do like a side, both our estate and our Zena Crown are in the market. If I do a side by side of those, frequently the Zena Crown is the one that is like the easiest for people to go, that I love that wine.
Mhm.
Not
Interesting.
that they don't feel that way about both of them, but there is an inherent sweetness that I think just attracts like all levels of consumer.
So this is a Pinot Noir for all palates, and this is a great way to close. You can visit Penner-Ash, and you offer tours and tastings so that you can your customers and your guests can experience it. Give us an example of a tasting experience.
Yeah, so we actually have 3 different tasting experiences.
Uh-huh.
We have one that you can just come up to the bar, walk in. You'll get 4 pours and then some bonus pours depending on where your palate leads you. So our
Mm-hmm.
tasting staff kind of like reads the room, and then we'll do some
Right.
bonus pours. Or you can do a sit down tasting in our original tasting room, which is absolutely lovely. You get a full view of Mount Hood and Mount Jefferson and the
Mm-hmm.
valley. And that I believe is 5 different Pinots. Again, you'll get some pours to curate where your palate goes. And then we have the legacy tasting, which is the pavilion where I am. And that is a full like 2 hour sit down.
Wow.
There's some little paired bites with it.
Hmm.
And you'll get some
Mhm.
library stuff in that. So it's like a more educational. So each level is a little bit more educational. Our staff here is absolutely incredible. They know the history
Mhm.
of this winery and the wines that we're making. And yeah.
So these are all obviously paid tasting experiences because it's expensive to do these. You give away a lot of wine otherwise. For the legacy tasting, which is 90 per person or 50 per club member. I'm looking at your website. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah. I
Is there a
have notes too.
minimum? Is there a minimum number of people to do that? Or can
I don't believe so. Nope. I
Okay.
think any level of guests
Yeah.
can come in for that. Yep.
Okay, that's good to
Yeah.
know. So all of these are available to study, which I was just doing, reaching across David at, at Penner-Ash. We have 3 computers in front
As
of
if
us.
there want.
Of course.
You, the website, Penner-Ash.com, where you can learn more about the winery, the story. There's some beautiful photos and how to visit and taste and join the community. Hey, Kate, it was really great to finally see you on
Yeah.
in person.
Likewise.
Yeah. Next time
Thank
will
you
be
so much for having me.
Next time it'll be in person.
next time
Yeah,
will be,
right.
for me at least, in person. He got to meet you in person, but in Oregon.
That's right. In Oregon. You guys got
Thank
to
you
come
for
up to
coming to
visit.
New Orleans. Thank you. We love it when
I
producers
had a
come and make
blast.
personal appearances in New Orleans.
Oh,
It
we-
makes us happy.
We did have a good time.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. I hope to
Yeah.
go back and do that event again next year. That was a lot of fun.
Let us know if you come to town.
Okay.
We're always here. Well, not
Will
always. But
do.
we'll be here. And hopefully
Anyway.
we'll get to see you out at Penner-Ash one day. That
Yeah.
would be fun.
Yeah,
be
you
nice.
guys, if you make it up here, please reach out. I would love
Yeah.
to see you.
We're trying.
Yeah.
Anyway, you've been listening to another edition of the Connected Table Live. We hope that this has stoked your appetite to travel, eat, drink, explore, and be inspired to step out of your wine tasting comfort zone and try new wines or a favorite grape varietal from another style. Just get out there and do it because it's a wonderful world of wine and food, and you should enjoy it. You only live once. So as we close this and we get ready to enter Mardi Gras here in New Orleans, we always want you, our followers, fans, and Kate to stay insatiably curious.